Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very delighted and so honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Himalaya, Ghana, Good Pod, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Kate DiCamillo. Our guest is returning to the podcast to celebrate the Puppets of Spelhorst. You know, we are so excited and so honored to invite Kate back into our studio. She is such a fantastic guest, and you are absolutely going to love this interview. If you are listening to this interview the day that we publish it, it is Halloween 2023. As all those little ghosts and goblins and other creatures prepare to come and say trick-or-treat at your house, I hope you take a minute to consider helping to bring a smile to kids' faces all over the world, especially down in El Salvador. Right now, as you're listening to this, I am in the beautiful nation of El Salvador with Clowns Without Borders. Clowns Without Borders is an organization dedicated to bringing a smile to kids who are living in refugee camps, fleeing violence, fleeing poverty, and other difficult situations, fleeing disasters. I'm honored to be a part of this tour. I'm very excited. It's my very first tour. We'd love for you to join us and follow my progress by joining us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We'd also love for you to help us fill up our clown car or our clown van. You can do that by going to clownswithoutborders.org and choosing to contribute. Thanks very much. Have a great, happy, and safe Halloween. And enjoy this incredibly special interview with Kate DiCamillo. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Minnesota. Our guest is returning to the show to celebrate so much. She has a brand new book out. It's called The Puppets of Spelhorst. It's part of a brand new trilogy called The Norendy Tales. Please welcome back to the show, Kate DiCamillo. Kate, how are you?
I'm very happy to be here. That's how I am. How are you?
I'm delighted to have you on. We've had so many phenomenal authors on the podcast, and it is wonderful that you and I share a passion for encouraging kids to read.
Yep, and parents to read.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've said it many times here in the podcast. I started this podcast because I'm not all that bright, but, you know, for me, I knew that the foundation, that the relationship I have with my kids now, who are now adults, was built on a foundation of reading when they were little kids. And that's what I wanted to share with parents. It was a true blessing to also learn that reading with your kids helps their vocabulary and helps them build empathy and all that other great stuff. But for me, it was that relationship that was so very, very important.
Yeah, and I always think of it as, and this happens with parents and kids. It happens with teachers in a classroom. It happens when, you know, somebody, a younger person goes into a nursing home and reads to somebody. It creates this third place, kind of like a safe place where these kind of tendrils meet underground. You're not even aware of the fact that you're connecting so deeply because you're focused together on the story, and that emotional connection happens kind of like you're caught unaware by it. But it happens, and it happens, and it happens, and it's magical.
Yeah, you know, a pastor of mine once told me, he said his vision of heaven, that we experience it here on earth, is when one person does something for another out of love, and they're both acting out of love. And it's that moment where that love comes together, that's that's what heaven's going to be like. And I think what you were talking about is it's very similar. It's that when we just come together and we just love being with each other, it's kind of a heavenly moment.
Yeah, and reading aloud to somebody is a way to love them.
Yeah. Well, I think that reading the Norendy tales aloud with somebody is a great way to love them. Tell them about the first book in the series, please.
So these, there are 3 in this series, and they're very, very loosely linked, but what they are is fairy tale novellas. So you could, speaking, of reading aloud, you could read this aloud in, an hour of reading, but you could read it over, a few evenings time. And it is, my greatest grand wish that it happens. I love it when people read it on their own, but to read it out loud, to read it together as a family, to read it, gathered around the table after dinner, boy, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have such great memories of school. I have also memories of being sent out into the hallway in the principal's office in elementary school. But I have great memories of our 4th grade teacher reading to us. Yeah. And, so many parents out there think, oh, my kid's independent reading now. I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore. I was kind of bummed out when I thought, oh, my daughter's in 2nd grade. I shouldn't be reading aloud to her. I was so happy when her teacher came to me and said, keep on reading with her. Keep on reading with her. It was such a blessing.
There goes Ramona the dog. Sorry.
Yeah. Ramona's cool.
And it's also, this is something that I heard a lot during the pandemic with teachers who were reading aloud to their 3rd grade class over Zoom, and how the siblings of these 3rd graders, older kids, 5th graders, 6th graders, would come into the room and listen as the 3rd grade teacher was reading aloud to the kids. And, sometimes when I go out and talk to a group of people, the last thing I'll say at the end is go home and read to your adult. And I say that to kids, it's like the parents can read to you, you can read to the parents, you can read to your dad while he's cooking you dinner, you can read to your mom while she's driving. And it's just like it goes both ways. It is, and whoever is getting to read the story gets just as much as the person who's hearing the story. It does that same magic.
Yeah. I love that. I love that idea of kids reading to you as you're driving them to soccer or ballet or school. What a great way to spend time.
And it's like, it's a gift that the kids can give to their parents, and again, it's, the thing that you and I like to talk about. It does that emotional connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what story are we going to experience as we're reading the Puppets of Spelhorst?
What's going to happen? Well, you're going to find, that it's the story of, a boy puppet, a girl puppet, a king puppet, an owl puppet, and a wolf puppet. And, all they know is that they're together in a story, and they don't know what the story is. And, through, this, like I said, relatively short book, they go on a very large adventure. And by the end, well, I won't give away the end, but there are more adventures in store for them.
Neat. I love that. That's kind of like life. We find ourselves with a wife or son, a daughter, a friend, and we don't quite know what adventure we're going to be going on.
Right. It's the puppets, at the beginning, the toy, store, clerk who sells them says they must be purchased together because they're in a story. So the puppets hear this. And they know it, just like we know we're in a story, but also like we don't know what's going to happen to us. And we have to take comfort in each other and trust in each other and meet our fate with high spirits and interest and curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah, I've shared here in the podcast in the past, one of the neat things that my daughter and I share is this ability to be in a possibly difficult situation and be able to sit back and say, this is going to make for a great story someday.
Well, what a skill that is. And that goes to the whole thing about like approaching everything with curiosity. It is a great way to move through the world. It's something that I struggle with a little bit myself. I tend to be fearful in nature, but I can remind myself that the thing to do always is to pay attention and be present for what's happening. And this also transfers to how you deal with other people. If you encounter each face as like somebody who has come to teach you something, and just be present with them in the moment. And that's, the curiosity and just stepping into it and letting it unfold.
What a great lesson to teach our kids, that every person that we meet has something to teach us.
Yeah. And it's, there's a wonderful novel, by Marilyn Robinson called Gilead. And, I can't run upstairs and get it, but I should. And there's a beautiful passage about that where the Reverend, in there, who's the narrator of the book, talks about that's what his father, who was also a Reverend, said to him. Treat every person you meet as somebody who has come, bearing a message for you.
Yeah.
So it's a lovely way to move through the world. And it's something that I try to remind myself of all the time.
Yeah, it really is. It's difficult sometimes when, people, when we're frustrated, when we're angry, when our kids are dealing with big feelings that they're not quite sure how to deal with yet. But maybe having that in the back of their mind that, but there's something this person is here to teach me. Maybe I can get it together enough to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just let me be present with them.
We have lots of authors who listen to the show who dream of one day being able to sell. They've sold 6 million copies of their books like you have. Are you still able, or how are you able to just be present in all of your books, and as they're being turned into movies and billions are being sold out there, to just be present with this one story and focus on that story?
Yeah, it's, I think a lot about something, that my best friend said to me. This was a long time ago when my first book got published. And that was because of Winn-Dixie. And that book did a lot better, surely, than I ever dreamed a first book would do. And, I said to my best friend, I don't understand all this. It's like, it's too much. It's just like, it's overwhelming. It's like, and she said, it's not about you, pumpkin. And those words were so helpful. And I repeat them to myself a lot because none of this is about me. My job is to tell the story. And in order to tell the story, I've got to get out of my own way. Getting out of my own way means not thinking about whether or not people are going to like it, not thinking about whether or not it's going to be reviewed well, or, all of that. I have to put that aside. It's like getting out of the way of my own ego and letting the story, which is always smarter and better than I am, come and show the way to me, as opposed to me following my own base ego. And it's not about me.
What a great friend.
Yeah.
We all need
a friend who's known me for forever. And so, knew exactly the right thing to say to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all need that sometimes. Just it's like, dude, not about you. Let's go back to reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And that has been super, super helpful. The other thing that, this is a trick that I have learned over time, that voice, I think that, we all have, that says you can't do this and you're going to mess this up, that critical voice. I have learned that for me, that voice isn't fully in gear until like 9:00 in the morning. So I always get up and write before the critical voice, the voice that worries about who's going to like it, the voice that says I can't make it work, all that voice kicks in at 9:00 and by then it doesn't matter because I've done the important work of the day.
That's good advice. Kind of like that old prayer. I hope I'm in heaven 30 minutes before the devil knows I'm dead.
Right, yeah.
Hey, I was also told that this is the 20th anniversary of your Tales of Despereaux book. What's that like, thinking back and like, wow, 20 years, this story's been out there for 20 years.
Yeah, when I hear that, and it sounds unbelievable to me, but what I flash on is like to do an in-person event and to have these 30-year-old kids come through the line. They're not kids, 30-year-old adults, and say, I am a 4th grade teacher, and I read this book, Tale of Despereaux, out loud to my 4th graders because my 4th grade teacher read it to us, and I remember it so clearly. That's what I think when I hear that 20-year thing. It's just like, how fantastic is that it's like a generation of kids, that got to grow up with that impossibly small mouse.
Yeah. That's such an honor, to be part of so many lives for so long. Do you ever take time to think about that?
When I'm there in a signing line with those faces in front of me, I like try to let it all in, and then afterwards I have to not think about it because then I'm in danger of thinking it's about me again, right?
Yes.
And it's like, so it's just like I let it in as it's happening, and afterwards it has nothing to do with you. It's not about me.
Yeah. I got in trouble one day. I was performing at a fair, and my beautiful wife was with me, and all of a sudden these 3 very beautiful 20-year-old girls came up and started giving me a hug, and my wife looks at me and she says, "Who are these people?" And I said, "I have no idea." And then they said, "Oh, you came and performed at our school in 3rd grade, and we loved you." And so then it was okay. My wife said, "All right, that's all right."
Yeah, but isn't that great that they remembered that?
It was. Yeah.
It is. It's an honor, right, to get to be a part of somebody's childhood.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of that, I was really surprised to hear that there are 9 and 10 and 11-year-olds who listen to the Reading with Your Kids podcast. And I'm wondering, what advice would you have for them as they're developing their writing muscle? What kind of advice would you give to them?
Yeah, this is the thing about writing advice, whether I'm giving it to 8-year-olds or 80-year-olds, it's always the same. It's the same task put down before all of us. And so my advice goes across the board, which is the first thing I always say is read as much as you can. And if you're not really happy to get that assignment, maybe you don't want to be a writer, so read as much as you can. And then I'm laughing because it took me so long to figure this out. You actually have to write. I dreamed for a long time of being a writer, but I didn't really want to do the work of writing, and you have to figure out a way to sit down and do the work. And for me, that was to promise myself that I was going to do 2 pages a day, and 2 pages is a very manageable kind of output. So read, write, and then you have to rewrite, because guess what? It is not going to come out right the first time. It just won't. And I think a lot of us think, oh, I've got this great idea. I know it's going to make a great book, and you sit down in front of the blank page or the blank screen, and you're like, oh no, I don't know how to do this and make it perfect. It's not going to be perfect. That's what rewriting's for. So you write, and then you rewrite, and you rewrite, and you rewrite. And keep a notebook. that like mine is like right here. I never have it far away from me. And, that notebook is a reminder to me to keep everything open. My heart and my eyes and my ears and my brain, and I take it with me everywhere. I eavesdrop. I listen to people talk. I look at the world around me, and I jot down the ideas in the notebook, and it's always with me. So that's my advice.
I love that advice of know that you're going to have to rewrite. How is it? Here you are, you're incredibly successful author with millions of books sold and books turned into movies. How are you still able to hear from an editor? Not quite sure this works. And what if you change this? How is it? Because I know myself, I have a real hard time, and I haven't sold anything, having somebody tell me, oh, well, I'm not crazy about this sentence here. Why don't you change it? What about that for you? Are you ever tempted to say, but I'm Kate DiCamillo. I'm like famous. And who are you telling me?
Yeah. No, never. Because what I've learned over, and this has been a long time that I've been doing this now, what I've learned is that, for the editor, it's like when you're writing a book, you're on a battlefield and you're in the trenches, and a good editor is flying over the field and can see everything that's going on. And I can only see, this hole that I'm digging as I'm moving through the trenches. And so I have learned to really, really trust that editorial feedback. It's not that I don't, this is a question that I ask myself as I'm doing my work without the editor, and then I ask myself again when the editorial letter comes in, when I feel that reluctance to do something, is like, is it because you're lazy? Is it because you're afraid? And generally the answer is one of those two things. If it's not lazy or afraid, then it's something that I really need to think about. Yeah, do I want to do this or not? But almost always it's that I'm afraid that I can't do the work, or it's just like, wow, that's a lot of work. I'm going to have to move this here and move that there. But it's always the editorial letter gets me a better novel. And I've learned to just trust the process.
It's fascinating and I guess comforting to hear that even somebody as successful as you gets afraid sometimes that they're not going to be able to do it.
Oh yeah, I'm afraid all the time. But again, that comes back to the thing about how long I've been doing it. It's like, what I've learned over time is that the process is always like, wow, I can go back to my notebooks as I work on novel after novel where I say, I can't do this. This can't be done. I don't know what I'm doing. It won't work. And all I know from one book to the next is there's always a way through. If I get out of my own way, if I let that story, that better part of me, that wiser part of me lead me rather than push me through.
Yeah. Hey, we were talking earlier about the Puppets of Spelhorst, and that's book 1 of a trilogy. Can you give us a hint of what we might find in book 2 and 3?
Well, you're still going to be in this land called Norendy, which is kind of like a world parallel to ours. But you're going to be with a totally different set of characters, but you will, if you read carefully, see where the stories intersect. So it's kind of like a little bit of a puzzle. Boy, it's been fun to do this, and it will be each book has a different illustrator, and they're just kind of, like I said, loosely linked. And again, same length, so you can share it over a couple nights, or sit and read it together in one sitting. Yeah.
I'm curious, you have this great career. Is there anything that you haven't written about, any story that you haven't told that you really want to tell, but you're having a hard time getting out there?
Yeah, I keep it
on that notebook.
Yeah, there's the notebook. I keep a list at the back of the notebook of that's all things that I think might turn into stories. So, and that list gets transferred from notebook to notebook, and I just have so many things that I want to turn into stories that sometimes it's like, let me live long enough and let me be patient enough to do it right, but it's just like I've got lots of stories I still want to tell.
Yeah. That list you show me real quickly, that's a good sized list.
Yeah, it is. That's right. That's only the first side of the paper. There's more on the other side. So yeah.
And it still gets you up in the morning. You're still excited to sit down and write every day?
I am. That fear is still there, but there is definitely excitement, and there's always this too. There's always the gratitude that I get to do it. It's one of those things where I feel like lucky to have found what I'm supposed to do, and to get to do it, and then to get paid to do it is just kind of like, it's been a gift.
That is a gift. I think we should gift our listeners and let them know where they can go to find out more about the Puppets of Spelhorst and all the wonderful books that you've created.
Yeah, you can go to your local independent bookstore. You can go to your library. You can find it online. And if you do find it, take it and share it with somebody else. Read it aloud. That would be a great gift to me too.
Yeah. I love that. A great way to say thank you to Kate is to read her books to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you. We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Puppets of Spelhorst, Book 1 and the latest trilogy from our guest, Kate DiCamillo. Kate, thanks so much for being back with us.
Oh, thank you, and it was an absolute delight.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Liz Leonard. She'll be here to celebrate Frizzy Lizzie. That is the next episode of the podcast. Hey, I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Kate DiCamillo. Please be sure to check out her Norendy Tales trilogy. The first book is available now. It's called The Puppets of Spelhorst. I also want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. You are the reason we do the Reading with Your Kids podcast. You are amazing, and we want to thank you for joining us. We also want to thank you for taking the time to make the world a better place. And believe it or not, you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.